How are you today, Daz?
Doing great. Sun's out. Beautiful day. How about you?
Yeah, pretty good, man. It's lovely down in Melbourne. It was a nice chilly start to the day, but it's getting warm. Very Melbourne-like.
And WA lockdown is pretty much all over, so it's fantastic.
You're all done, so you're out and about in the world now, are you?
Yes.
Oh, look at you go!
Woohoo.
Awesome, awesome. We're still in Melbourne, still a bit stricter than that. So hopefully not too long until we get down to the pub and have a beer.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the plan.
That's the key point, isn't it?
Priorities, mate. You got to get to the
That's
pub.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So in terms of what we're looking at talking about today, so we're going to be focusing today on some assets, which is a pretty cool topic. We're going to be talking about the maintenance planner more specifically, but we'll also touch on recurring jobs as well. So I know that this has been a passion of yours for quite some time with the maintenance planner and how it all works.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, the difference between maintenance planner and recurring jobs, and so I'm doing recurring jobs now. Do I need maintenance planner? What extra is it going to give me? There's a lot of questions around it, and it's quite complicated to decide whether or not you need maintenance planner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're going to run through today, and hopefully we can shed some light on it for you, that if you do run a maintenance company, any company that does maintenance on items tested on customer sites, we'll let you know what the difference is, what you can get out of each one, and I guess help you to make your decision whether you want to upgrade.
Yeah, nice. Well, I mean, you're pretty much a simPRO dinosaur these days. So
Just a dinosaur.
yes, well, you're not a dinosaur. You're a simPRO. You've been around for about 100 years. Do you have a bit of a history for the maintenance planner? Like, how have you found its evolution to kind of where it's gotten to today?
Well, it hasn't changed a huge amount in the way it works, but there's been some extra features added on. Even, for example, recently in the mobile, there's the way the mobile uses the maintenance, the assets that you test is so much better than it was. The interface is a lot cleaner. It's very easy to see what you've tested and how many more to go, seeing past results of all the tests you've done previously. I think the evolution within enterprise hasn't changed too much, but with the new mobile app, it's changed a lot, and it's so much easier to use. And the fact that you can see now easily all the test results without actually applying them to the asset you've got now, that's a fantastic thing from mobile. That's an evolution. But the essence of the maintenance planner is for somebody or a company who does testing or maintenance on a large number of individual products or components, such as a fire company that have doors, panels, sprinklers, potentially a couple of thousand on a particular site, maybe more. Someone who does plumbing, backflow valves as well. That's another big one that you can do. Huge hospitals that have hundreds of them, and they all need to be tested within specific specs. And then you've got HVAC companies, which is another common one, and they've got various levels of testing. So it's not just go out and do this every 3 months. It's every 3 months you've got to do this. Every 6 months you've got a completely different type of test and maintenance that you perform. And then once a year you do the big test, and you actually do some specific things that you don't do in your quarterly and your 6 monthly. So that's just a quick overview of what sort of companies would use maintenance planner. So what it does now and what it did before is very similar, but I think it's a lot more accessible than it was before. I think that's the key. So when this is probably the next evolution of what we're talking about is if you use recurring jobs and you've got your assets in recurring jobs and you're happy with recurring jobs, just in a roundabout way, what's the key things that you can get out of maintenance planner if you do think it's time to upgrade to maintenance planner from recurring jobs?
Yeah, totally. Well, that's a pretty common question that I get all the time. I'm using recurring jobs now. Why should I go to the maintenance planner? Like, is it appropriate to go to the maintenance planner? Because I know, most people know that there's a lot of work involved to migrate to the maintenance planner as opposed to using recurring jobs. So it can be a bit of a daunting a bit of a daunting prospect to actually go across to the maintenance planner as opposed to continuing to use recurring jobs, because setting up a recurring job, as you're probably well aware, whilst it doesn't take long to set one up, to set up 10, 50, 100, 200 recurring jobs does take some time.
Yeah.
A lot of people have their systems all up and running with the recurring jobs, and to kind of scrap all that and move to a completely different way of running your maintenance tests is a pretty big decision to make within a business. And you really want to make sure that you are making the appropriate choice from moving across from the recurring jobs over to the maintenance planner, because you're about to throw away a lot of work and you're about to do things in a very different way. So the biggest, probably one of the key statements that I make to a customer is, are you doing site-based maintenance or are you doing asset-based maintenance? That's probably the easiest way to differentiate between the recurring jobs versus the maintenance planner. So if you've got to go to a single site and you're just going to do all the backflow valves and you're going to test them all, and that's all you're doing that once a year. Is it necessary to go across to the maintenance planner in that instance? I don't know. I don't think so. Not if you've already got it all set up. I think it generally works quite well. But if you have got asset-based maintenance, where if we kind of put our fire hat on and we say, well, there could be extinguishers, there could be blankets, there could be wet systems that you're also doing. So you've got your sprinklers as well as your dry systems. And each asset type, whether it be the blanket, the extinguisher, needs different test frequencies. So the extinguisher may be getting tested every 3 months, every 6 months, and every 12 months, whereas a blanket may be getting tested every month and every 6 months. So as soon as we start going to the asset-based maintenance and we're looking at different test frequencies for different asset types at the same property, that's realistically when the maintenance planner comes into play. Whereas the site-based maintenance, I would kind of classify as you're going to one property to do one thing periodically, whether it's monthly, quarterly, six monthly, 12 months, it doesn't matter, because you can set the frequency up against the recurring job, however you like. But they're kind of the key examples that I give people when we're talking about which one's more appropriate for their business.
Absolutely. And with your asset-based maintenance, each asset has its own schedule. So that's basically what you were alluding to, that every single asset has its own schedule, which can be completely different for every visit. So this time around, these two items, I'm doing the annual, but the item over there is getting its 5 yearly. The item over there is actually getting a quarterly test, and the 5 items downstairs, I'm doing a 6 monthly test. Yep. And simPRO keeps track of every asset, when it was last tested and what its next type of test needs to be. Whereas the recurring job, you have one template job that has all the assets in, and you would use that when you're going to do the same type of test on all assets at the same time, so you don't have to track it individually.
Yep.
You know? And it does. You can still do an annual. You might know that you do your annuals in December, and you know that you do your 6 monthlies in July. So it doesn't mean that you're performing the same test every time you go, but it's mainly about all the assets on site generally get the same test or same maintenance every time you go.
Yeah, totally.
That's the key difference. But there's extra features that just recently I had a HVAC company who we actually did half a day on this to go through, should they use it, will they need it? And the features that they wanted is what the maintenance planner can deliver. And one of those features was the ability from site to fail particular assets and then have a one-click quote creation process in the office. So that's one key feature from the maintenance planner, is that someone goes to site when assets fail. Those failures will then appear straight away in the main system. And let's say there were 6 failures on site. You can click create quote for those failures. And what it actually does is it builds a quote for you for the right customer, the right site. It attaches all the assets that failed, so just the ones that you need to quote on, and the results, the notes, and the extra information that was typed in from site for those assets comes across to the quote as well. So it basically, with one click, it creates the whole quote ready to go. And then all you need to do is read what's wrong and price it up.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
I mean,
and
a lot of people don't even, I was going to say, a lot of people don't even know that that defect rectification form even exists because it's tucked way down so low in the pecking order of forms when you're looking at your quote. So you need to make sure that you are using the right form as well, that defect rectification quote. 'Cause it's awesome. It puts on that quote like the assets that actually failed, not all the assets that were tested, just the ones that have had any critical failures that you've generated your alerts from.
That's a huge time saver. A huge time saver. Makes a big difference.
Yep, totally.
So then there's a few extra features that are connected to that. So can you tell us about the failure points and recommendations that come from those as well?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. So when you're setting up the asset types, so if we kind of just look at the asset type as its own little entity. So the asset type in reality is just a template of an asset that you're going to create an asset off of. So when you're setting the maintenance planner up, or you're setting up the asset types with the maintenance planner, you're going to have a new tab in there that's called service levels. So in those service levels, you can jump in there. You can go pretty much options and then edit failure points. So jump in those failure points and start popping them in. So the failure points were really designed to give the end user, being the technician out in the field, the ability to fail the asset based on specific reasons as to why you wouldn't pass it. So for example, if you're testing a fire blanket, a pretty common failure point for a fire blanket is that it's missing. So if the fire blanket isn't there, you would not, yes, you could fail it, that's fine, but that relies on someone to be reading the job or running reports to find failed assets. Whereas if it's a critical failure, what simPRO will do is simPRO will actually give you an alert to let you know there's been a critical defect found against that asset type. And that's what then allows you to create those defect rectification quotes. So I guess further to that, and it is a bit of a rabbit hole, the maintenance planner, because how far down the rabbit hole do we really want to go? Like, is it necessary just to put in a failure point, or do you want to then add recommendations to that failure point? So for example, a recommendation for that failure point, if the fire blanket was missing, would be to replace the fire blanket. So if you want to, again, we're talking rabbit hole now. If you want to, you can also set up some set price pre-builds that would be the cost to replace that fire blanket and dump that into the recommendation. So if we want to try and streamline processes, when we're doing the defect rectification quote, we can say, tick, 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 grab these assets, create a quote for me. And based on the recommendation that's been selected, it can actually pre-price up that quote for you too. So it's a really powerful tool to be able to get those quotes priced up quite quickly. But it is a lot of setup work to potentially have to go to each asset type, go to each failure point, add the recommendations, and then add the pre-builds to it to get your desired result. Whereas a lot of people will probably just skip all that part there. They'll probably just set the failure points up just to give them the alert. So that way they can create the defect quote, which kind of then leads into other parts down the line when we start talking about reporting, because there's an annual system condition report that's awesome, and that only works from the failure points. God, I'm talking a lot now. I'm saying a lot of words. So yeah, so I guess in a nutshell, they're great for just generating alerts to let you know something's gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to sort of cover exactly what you said in a slightly different way, the technician goes to site and they click asset failed. So they know their specs, they know what passes, when it's working correctly and when it's not. And then as soon as they click fail, it's going to pop up with a list of what simPRO calls failure points. So imagine them a multi-selection list of things, of reasons why it failed. So one of the other reasons why you'd like to do that is it saves time. It saves time on site. So your technician, instead of having to click fail and then type something in manually, what they do is they have a drop-down list and they just go tick, and that's why it's failed. Bang, they're on with their next asset, ready to go. The other thing of why you might like the next level, so it's failed because it's missing. And then I'm going to the recommendation that pops up then, because it can actually then make it pop up with recommendations. What should we do? The replacement. There are some things like replacement fire blanket, which actually is a known quantity. It is something you can create as a pre-build, and it is something that can add to the quote automatically for you. With extinguishers, it's a little bit different, but you could say, let's say an extinguisher has been discharged, And it's kind of almost at its 5-year out of date anyway. It's really not worth spending much money on. So there's a few different options that you could select. So this person says, extinguisher failed because it's been discharged. And then the recommendation could be to recharge it. It could be to replace it. And when you replace it, you might replace it and they can suggest with a 4.5 kilogram or a 3.5 kilogram or, you know, a CO2 or H2O or whatever the different types are, DCP, they can choose not only that it failed, the reason why it failed, and then select what should happen on the quote, as in what is it going to be replaced with. And so therefore, when you get the alert, when you click the button, you have all the information about why it failed, which is going to go on the quote. And it's actually putting the pricing on the quote for you as well. Recommend replacing with this. So the pre-build that goes on is 1 by DCP 4.5 kilogram extinguisher, supply and install, and the price is already sitting there. Now it's absolutely a rabbit warren, and how many different multiple choice options do you want to give them when they go out to site? So I would say for a smaller company who doesn't have too many technicians doing this kind of work, when you spend hours and hours and weeks creating all of these choices, you're going to save a little bit of time per technician. But once you get to 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, you're shaving off minutes or hours a week, times by 40 people, times by 40 weeks of working time a year, or you know, depending on their holidays and RDOs, etc. That adds up to a lot of time. And so your potential one solid week of typing stuff into simPRO, 40 hours, which is painful, will actually pay off potentially in the first month, because not only are you getting information that's consistent, because choosing from a multiple choice, there's no spelling mistakes, and they're choosing it in a way that's already pre-typed by you, we assume correctly. When they have to type it manually, who knows what they're going to, and they're going to say it in a different way. They're going to use different wording. And then who knows if the wording they used is customer ready, is what I call it. It may need some corrections. Let's put it that way. So that's a feature only available in Maintenance Planner. With the recurring jobs or standard asset management, you've got pass and fail. You've got test results, so that you can actually then say, every time I go out, I want to collect the temperature, I want to collect the pressure, I want to collect the cycles per minute, or, you know, how many hours it's being used for. So there's different things you can collect, and you've got a notes box. The Maintenance Planner has all of that, and the reason why it failed as a drop down, and then the recommendations list, which is if it fails because of this reason, what should we do? So that works extremely well. And a little tip for anyone who's got Maintenance Planner, those recommendations could have a pre-build with hours on it. So you can actually you can tick more than one. So recommend replacement, install time 2 hours. Recommend replacement, install time 4 hours plus travel, you know, or something. And you can actually add tick, 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 and that's building the quote again. The quicker you get that quote back out, the quicker you can get a service tech back out there to do more work, essentially.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the maintenance is a really good way to find more work. I mean, most people do use maintenance like this as a way to generate additional work for the business, because you don't generally tend to make a lot of these maintenance agreements. You're usually running pretty skinny with margins. So the more efficient you can be and the more work that you can find as a result of doing these tests, the more profitable your business will be. So it's really about trying to streamline those processes to try and find as much work as possible to be able to send out as many quotes as possible. So the more quotes you get out, the more work you're expected to win, obviously. So if you can try and streamline it, then it's obviously a massive bonus.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you nailed it on the head there, is that what simPRO does for a company is it increases their level of service. It increases the customer's perspective on what you do on site and how you do it. And it enables them to get a lot more professionalism, because the templates are more professional. The information coming backwards and forwards is more professional, and the speed now that you can get it back to them. When someone leaves site, if they've typed things in correctly and clicked the right buttons, which isn't that hard, it's multiple choice, you can have a quote before they've even, got to the first set of lights. That customer will have the quote waiting for their approval. Now, if you can get quotes out that fast, how many other companies out there, your competitors, are able to get quotes out in a few minutes after the technician leaving in a template that looks good, that has all the information they need, including all the results from the testing and the maintenance done 10 minutes ago? I think it's a game changer for anyone who doesn't have a system like simPRO.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, simPRO's bread and butter from a workflow perspective, project, service, and maintenance. So if the maintenance is generally, or preventative maintenance is generally one of the harder workflows to nail down for a business that doesn't use simPRO, purely because there's so many spreadsheets involved. Like I could rock up to a customer site and I'm like, let's have a look at your assets, man. Like, what do you got? And he's like, well, how long you got? So
have you ever had those ones? They go to the filing cabinet and you go, no.
Yeah. They're the fun ones. I'm like, well, we need to get all that and put it over here in a computer now. But even if it's in a computer, like most people have spreadsheets set up at a per site level as well. So they then go to the spreadsheet, open that one up. There's usually 15 tabs in there. There's 42 colors. There's failed assets, past assets. I'm like, well, how are you tracking this now? How on earth are you doing this with you guys on site? And it's a much easier and user-friendly experience if we can massage that into the maintenance planner, set it all up, and then just give the guys the ability to be able to pass and file assets quite effectively through the phone.
Absolutely.
And you touched on before, man, like the simPRO mobile app now, how it's even got assets that are barcode, and it's got an inbuilt barcode scanner. Like you can even get really adventurous, and the guys can edit the asset types in the app, add the barcode into the assets. The next time they go back, they can just scan it. It's just, it's about efficiency, speed, and quotes, and closing this stuff. Obviously being compliant, but getting your stuff done as quick as possible. That's really the aim of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely for sure. And then, a company that is looking to get the maintenance planner, what sort of costing are we looking at? Do you have an idea of how many $1,000 a month it's going to add to their bill?
Oh, it's not much. It's 100 and whatever it is. It's an additional cost of an enterprise license, really. That's all the cost.
It's the same price as what they're paying for one enterprise user license right now.
Yeah. So if you just take that cost, and it's the equivalent of one enterprise license, and if you can save yourself, 3-4 hours a week, and that's not hard to do, it's already paid for itself. So anything thereafter is just going to be, gravy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. For the companies that can save time, and if you save technicians time and admin time, that saves you money. Mm-hmm. You can do the numbers pretty quickly and see the time that it could save you. Maybe it is worth that cost.
Totally. One of the things that I generally tend to say to people, I'm like, you can always make back money, but you can never make back time. So you can always find another thing to quote. You can always find something else to do. You can try and make back that $160, but can you ever make back those 10 hours of just sitting there dicking around with spreadsheets? Probably not. You're never going to get that time back. That's just a time sink, but you can make $160 back pretty quick. So that's kind of like the rationale that I put behind it.
Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about is the customer portal. Now, I know a lot of people are a little bit scared to let a customer into their simPRO system. Mm-hmm. The customer portal is built specifically for customers. It doesn't show anything that you don't want them to see. And you can limit the types of information that they can edit or touch. In fact, most people turn off editing everything. Mm-hmm. And they can just view their assets and maybe view the current status of their assets. And maybe they can view the quotes that you've sent that have not yet been approved. Whether you show them where the jobs are up to, etc., that's kind of up to you. But there are also some great reports they can pull themselves. So if you're going for a contract or a tender, or if you're looking to take your company to the next level, explaining to your customers that there is a portal that they can log in and they can see where all of their assets are, what assets they've got, when they were last tested, the full history, which ones are currently sitting as failed, and what quotes they need to actually approve to get everything back up to speed. You know, without even actually giving them access, it just sounds impressive just telling them that.
Yeah, it does.
Whether they'll actually log in or not, it's another story. But you have that ability to give to them, and maybe you won't give it to all, but there's quite a few, you know, sort of government or even real estates and facilities management companies that they dig that sort of stuff. They'd much rather be able to jump in, have a quick look, than wait for a return phone call.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I know that a lot of my customers that have gone down the maintenance planner path have pretty much said to me that a lot of tenders that they're going out for are saying you need to have access to a portal to even apply for this tender. Most of those people have no intentions of ever using the portal. They're kind of just vetting the people that are applying just to make sure they've got the correct systems in place.
Yeah.
So, but the portal's great, man. Like it's got like your PPM reports in there, and it's got your asset test reports, and a little bit of a tip as well. If you do get the maintenance planner enabled, you will need to double back into the customer portal and actually tick the additional boxes in the setup of it, just to enable those reports to appear, because by default they won't be ticked if the maintenance plan is turned on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So talking about the portal, we've spoke about the asset types. What about contracts, man? Like how do you see contracts fitting in with the whole maintenance planner and assets and all that sort of stuff?
Well, the main reason, whether you use maintenance planner or not, the main reason that I normally recommend contracts, aside from the fact that it'll come up with an alert saying, hey, your contract's due to expire, you know, on this date if you want it to, is what if I have a contract and I tendered for this contract and given a price to say every year to keep all of your assets serviced and up to date, it's going to cost, let's say, 20 grand. Mm-hmm. You know, or 12,000. Let's make it nice and easy. So what we're going to do, that involves some, you know, annual testing and maintenance, which takes a bit longer, and some quarterly stuff, which is a bit quicker, and some monthly stuff. And we're just going to bundle it all together. It's 12 grand, which is $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to invoice you $1,000 a month. That keeps my cash flow standard, your cash flow standard, but we're going to do the tests that are required throughout the whole year. So some months we might be there for 5 days in a row, and some months we might be there only for half a day because it's only quarterly. So what you do is you have a recurring invoice for $1,000 that's set up as a template, and you'll be able to send that off. In fact, you can even send it off automatically every month. It'll just go out the door. So the testing, maintenance, and servicing of the equipment is done as a job. And you don't invoice those jobs necessarily because you're invoicing this $1,000 a month. You're not invoicing how long it took you. You're invoicing as per the contract. Cool. So we want to connect those two together. So we want to say, I actually want to know for this particular contract, how much we're invoicing versus how much it's costing us on a month-by-month basis. Now, the jobs that you're doing are not getting invoiced, and they're not even connected to the invoices that you're doing that are automatically being sent out. By the way, that's a great feature that you can, if you haven't switched that on yet, your recurring invoices can auto email straight out the door without you having to do it every month. If anyone hasn't done that, look into it, go to the help guide. So what we do is the invoice is created connected to a contract. All the recurring jobs or maintenance planner jobs are connected to the contract. And now we can do contract reporting to see how those two mix together, the sales of the invoice and the costs of the jobs on a weekly, monthly, 6 monthly basis. Mm-hmm. And you can do that for all your different sites, because don't forget, you might actually do service work and repair work and install work at the same site as well. Mm-hmm. And you don't want that to get confused in. So you can't just do really a site report, because you might be making money from the site, but your maintenance might be losing money. Mm-hmm. So it's fairly important to be able to track that specifically on the maintenance, because, you know, I don't want to tell people how to run their business, but I will. Exactly. You shouldn't go into a maintenance contract with losing money with the plan that you'll pick up work to make it back. Mm-hmm. The maintenance program should stand on its own 2 feet. Mm-hmm. You should not be losing money. Maybe you're not making a fortune, but you should not be losing money. And then anything additional is the cream on top. That's how it should be run. And anyone who's not doing it that way, you know, I hope it's working for you. But, you know, most people meet their demise at some point. You know, when money's tight, they stop doing replacing things. They stop doing capital works. So the maintenance program has to be profitable by itself. And this is how you know whether it's profitable, because you'll be able to get it on a per site or even per contract. You know, there could be different tenancies that you test at the same time that actually have, you know, you want to actually get it by tenancy, not by site, which is even better. Again, they could be different contracts.
Yeah, you're really rolling the dice if you're, you know, hoping that you just generate more work from your maintenance agreement. You really need to make sure the maintenance agreement itself is profitable. I understand that the margins aren't super great. They are generally quite skinny, but you still should be making something off it. And being able to ensure that you can report effectively on any PPM work versus your do and charge work is really important. And that maintenance contract, like you said, really ties together the fact that you've got two different parts of simPRO that are disassociated from each other. You're just tying them together with that contract, being the recurring invoice and any maintenance work, because they are two separate entities. Without the contract, there's just no way to tell. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've covered most of what I wanted to cover. Is there anything you think we've missed there, Adzy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd probably like to touch a little bit on reporting as well, because I think the reporting aspects of the maintenance plan or maintenance or assets in general is quite important. So I've got my favorite reports. It's kind of a bit sad that I have favorite reports, but I have favorite reports. So, I mean, the couple of key reports I generally tend to run through with everyone. One of them doesn't actually have anything to do with the maintenance planner itself. It's just the asset test history report. That's a really good one to isolate your failures, because in reality, you don't really care what's passed, you care what's failed. Like that's the important stuff, as well as the annual system condition report. And that one's a bit of a hidden gem that not a lot of people know about. Do you generally tend to recommend the annual system condition, man?
Yeah, I don't find as many people use that as probably what they should. And even if I show it to them, they tend to just sort of revert back to other things or other ways that they're doing things. But the asset test history, I find that's great. The condition report is quite good as well.
Well, even for those that have never used it, what's the system condition report? What's that one actually give you?
So the system condition report gives you the current condition of all assets and whether they are currently in spec or up to standards. And it will actually tell you, and you know, how many items on site right now do not meet the requirements or require further works in order to get them up to speed. So it's a nice, easy report. It's potentially run if there's an inspector on their way. They tell us what we need to do quick, and so you can send that report, and they can get, you know. But if it is all up to date, which it could be, that's kind of proof. You send them that report and say everything is up to speed, in spec, and documented accordingly.
Well, I mean, one of the things about that annual system condition report that I like the most is that, as you said, it actually says these assets are passed and these assets haven't. One of the biggest benefits I see to running that report is that it will actually then group together any defect rectification quotes that are still outstanding. So you've got the front page on there being, this is what's passed, this is what's not currently up to spec. And then what it will do is it'll say, now to get it up to spec, these next 10 quotes are still outstanding from a defect rectification perspective. So if you're just after a really nice, simple area to go to, just to provide the customer, these 10 defect quotes are still outstanding, that report there is just gold, because you can just pull it all up like in one click and say, show me all my outstanding quotes that have been issued from defects. That in itself is enough reason to use failure points. Like, even if you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of failure points, I usually just say create one that just says that it doesn't meet applicable standards or something along those lines. so they can just fail it, saying it doesn't meet whatever standards that you're playing with.
Yeah.
Get the alert, create the quote from there. So therefore you can then group them together in that annual system condition report. It's a really powerful tool, I think. And it's something that I
Absolutely.
really push onto everyone because I think it just saves so much time.
Yes, and you touched on something that I forgot. I had in my mind before, but I forgot to say. Is just a tip as well. When you're getting started, obviously this rabbit hole that we're talking about, you can spend months and months trying to prepare all the different failure points. If at the beginning, if all you have is one for critical and one for non-critical, 2 failure points will take you next to no time to create them for each service level, and that is enough to get all the reporting and to get your quick quotes created. That gets you going. And I'd recommend that that's the place you start while you're sort of building your maintenance plan, a list of failure points, etc. Just go critical and non-critical, and all these other reports will work straight away without needing to have 100 reasons why something could fail. You know, because they can type it in the notes. Hey?
Yep.
So, you know, ideally we want them to tick a box, but in the meantime, while you're preparing for it, choose critical, choose non-critical, type in the notes, the actual fault, and all of that comes across to the report and gives you the quick quoting ability as well that Maintenance Planner gives you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they're like, in my opinion, they're probably the most 2 important reports, just your, because there's a few in there. There's like maintenance jobs created. There's the preventative maintenance, the PPM report, which is okay. I mean, a lot of the reports are okay. I mean, there's really nothing that blows my socks off from a reporting perspective. The reports are functional, but I still think there's probably a lot of the sort of questions that I get is, can you give me a really nice, sexy looking report that's got graphs on it, that's got the amount of assets that have passed and failed and all that kind of sexy stuff that people like presenting their customers? Nothing in simPRO natively really does that. If you wanted those kind of graphs, you probably need to go into the BI tool, which is a story for another day and a session all on its own. Like I said, reports for me, they're functional at best. There's a couple that are really critical that you should be using, but a lot of what you probably need from a graph perspective is probably sitting in that BI tool because the information's there. It's just a matter of getting it out and making it looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're good. The reports are good. They're solid. You're probably not winning any presentation awards with them, but they are actually very informative, and almost all the customers that receive them are quite happy to do so. They're easy to read. They're quite straightforward. They have the information they need.
Yeah. And I mean, the other things you can also do, I mean, there's forms inside the jobs as well. So there's like the job asset test form. There's a defect form inside of the job. A lot of my customers will just attach those forms to the job and email them out with the invoices. But yeah, I mean, gosh, we could talk probably for another half hour on this, but I think we've probably gone already half hour.
I think so. So one extra thing I wanted to point out, which is also going to be a topic for another day, is that the quote form builder does allow you to put assets on, which do include the test results of those assets that have failed and you've created the quote for. The other thing is just a quick summary of why would you use recurring jobs and assets, and why would you use maintenance planner jobs. So from recurring jobs point of view, if it's site-based, you can create your template in recurring jobs. And when you go to site, all the assets are on that particular job. All the notes and the attachments, etc., are all on that job as well. You can actually pre-price that job if you are charging after each visit, so that the whole template is ready to go and you're just going about doing your maintenance based on the whole site getting done at the same time. With Maintenance Planner, you do lose some of that functionality, which we didn't cover previously. You can't preload it with, technically, without some tricks. You can't preload it with pricing. You can't preload it with, say, specific notes or specific descriptions linked to the job. You can do that with sites, or you can do that with customer notes. There's a few other ways you can do it, but it's not as seamless as a recurring job. You can't add pre-attachments on the job. You can add them to site now that the mobile app allows you to see that, which is fantastic. But what you would use Maintenance Planner for is if you want this extra reporting, if you are a asset-based tester. So you're actually testing assets at different service levels on the same site. And all the different assets would keep track of where they're up to in the cycle, as opposed to doing the whole site at once. And the ability to, I guess, increase the reporting for the customer at the customer portal. And also you get some extra reports at your end as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that pretty much covers it off, mate.
Cool.
I think what we'll probably most likely end up doing, I think, for maybe another video for another day, is probably going through some maintenance planner tips and tricks, because there's a lot of additional information we probably could provide in terms of fun little workarounds for time and billing and all that sort of stuff. So maybe we'll park all that for another video, and we'll double back to this on another day.
Sounds good. I'm Darren Whitby. I'm from Platinum Consultants. If you know anyone who could use simPRO or maybe would like a demo, I do lots of sales demos, and I guess the difference with me is if you're getting it from me, I have a very good technical knowledge of simPRO. So I'll be able to help them out with what actually will work, as opposed to a sales speech of, why you need it. So contact me, Darren, at platinumconsultants.com.au. And what about you, Adz?
Yeah, mate. Yep. So you can contact me at info@amac.consulting, or you could just find me at amac.consulting on the internet. But other than that, yeah, it's been really nice chat. So thank you so much for joining in. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for your support in the first few videos as well. If you do want to contact us to maybe feature in the video or have a chat, it is simprochats@gmail.com. Anything else that you wanted to kind of sign off with, buddy?
Just that we are now doing this as a podcast as well. So if you think you would like to listen to us endlessly audio, just search for simPRO Chats in iTunes or whatever podcast app that you generally use, and we should come up. And all of these episodes will be available in the form of a podcast. Beautiful.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time again, man. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you in the next video.
See you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.